Hello everyone, it's Imran here. Welcome back to another video. So, I know I'm a week late on this, but given the fact of the week I've just had, it's no surprising I've only got around to reacting to this just now. I'm going to be reacting to the Season 5, Episode 1 of Keith Adams' Thomas and Friends audio stories, which is Thomas and the Railway Games Part 1. Part 2 is going to come out tomorrow, it is, but today I'm going to react to Part 1, like I said, which was uploaded last week. It was. I've just, like I said, I've had a bit of a crazy week. I have, which means it's not until now that I've just only come around to reacting to this audio story right here. So my last Kiefer Adams video I reacted to on this channel was the Big City Engines audio special. If you want to see me check that out, have it up in the top right corner of your screen. Yeah. So yeah, that's the last time I reacted to a video from Kiefer Adams' channel. Been really looking forward to season 5 of his audio stories. Like I said, I absolutely love Kiefer's audio stories. Kiefer makes some of the best audio stories in the Thomas fandom. It is right here. And I really look forward to season 5. I'm just really unfortunate that I've had to wait nearly a whole week before I could react to this. I could react to this audio story, but this is obviously season 5 starts off with a 2-part special. It does of Thomas and the Railway Games. This is obviously going to be part 1 I'll react to, then hopefully tomorrow I'll react to part 2. But that will just depend if I'm able to, but I'm pretty sure I will. But really excited to see what happens in part 1, and yeah, that's basically all I gotta say. Links to I'm reacting to in the description down below, as always. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight into this. And begin reacting to Season 5 of Kiefer Adams' Thomas audio stories.
Thomas and the Railway Games, Part 1. Written and told by Kiefer Adams. One cool afternoon, Edward was resting at Elsbridge Station when Percy bustled in, feeling very excited. "Edward," he cried, "the Fat Controller's just found out that we might be going to York." "York?" asked Edward. "Home of the National Railway Museum?" I think so," said Percy. "He said that some of us will be going to compete in some sort of competition." "Ah, that will be the Railway Games," said Edward. Percy was puzzled. "What exactly are the Railway Games?"
Yeah.
"It's when engines travel from far and wide to York to compete in a series of challenges with the museum's engines," explained Edward. "Oh, how exciting!"
Whoa.
cried Percy. "I hope Thomas and I will get to go." "So do I," agreed Edward. "When will the Fat Controller announce the engines going?" "This evening," replied Percy.
Okay.
"Well,
so we're doing this
chosen,
in the hype up to
I
the
wish
Olympics
them the
this
best
summer.
of luck," smiled Edward. Percy smiled too. He was soon out of the station, feeling rather excited. Edward wished he could go, but of course, some of the Fat Controller's engines would have to stay and still run the railway. That evening, the Fat Controller gathered some of the engines at Tidmouth Sheds. He held a piece of paper in his hand. "After much careful thought," he began, "I have decided which engines will be coming along to York for the Railway Games next week."
Who is it?
The engines watched with bated breath. "The first engine I will be taking to York is Gordon," announced the Fat Controller.
Gordon!
"Oh, sir," Gordon beamed, "it is truly an honour to come with you. Perhaps my brother, Flying Scotsman, will be there."
Let's hope.
"That's if you recognised him from his visit last year," chortled Henry. "Ahem," said the Fat Controller. "The next engine who will be coming to York is James." "Oh, brilliant!" James cried happily. "I hope there'll be some splendid engines like me up there." The Fat Controller pretended not to hear. "The third engine coming with me to York for the Railway Games is Percy." Percy couldn't believe what he had heard. "What an honour!" he cried. "Thank you, sir." Thomas and Henry looked at each other. "And the last engine that's coming with me to York is Thomas," said the Fat Controller. Thomas couldn't believe his eyes. Henry completely understood. He knew that most of the engines would have to stay behind and carry out the work.
Yep.
"It's settled," declared the Fat Controller. The 4 of you will be heading off to York for the Railway Games next week.
Ooh.
The following week, the preparations were soon made.
Thomas, Percy,
James,
Gordon, and James.
Thomas and Percy were lined up at the big station ready to go. Toby, Duck, Donald, Douglas, Oliver, Henry and Edward came to see them off, wishing them all the best of luck in their participation in the Railway Games. The guard blew his whistle and the mighty cavalcade puffed away. Gordon was even pulling a special coach for the Fat Controller to ride in. The journey was long, but the engines were excited all the way. Before long, the 4 engines had crossed the bridge, leaving behind their Sudrian home, and were travelling over mainland territory. Do you think we'll meet some old friends up there? Asked Percy. Who did you have in mind? James asked. Well, like Flying Scotsman, as Gordon said, or maybe Duck's friends, City of Truro, or maybe engines we used to work with. Come on, Percy, said Thomas. Not everyone we used to work with is going to be at that museum. Quite right, Thomas, agreed Gordon. These engines would have been all over the place. At last, the National Railway Museum came into view. Tired, but...
I definitely did enjoy the Christopher Audrey book, Thomas and the Great Railway Show. Even though not many people are fans of Chris Audrey's books, Thomas and the Great Railway Show, where Thomas is at the National Railway Museum, is a good book in my opinion.
Triumphant, Thomas, Percy, James and Gordon soon arrived. They were greeted warmly by the museum manager, who made them feel welcome and offered them the guest sheds. The next day would be the longly anticipated Railway Games. Thomas was excited as he saw the trucks being prepared for the first event. He wanted to help too, and the museum director was more than happy to have Thomas's services. Thomas bustled backwards and forwards, but this yard was bigger than what he was used to on his branch line. Thomas had just marshalled some vans into a siding.
Stepney the Bluebell engine.
Voice. Well, I don't believe what I'm seeing. Backing next to him was Stepney, the Bluebell engine. Stepney, gasped Thomas. Whatever are you doing here? Are you representing the Bluebell Railway? I wish, replied Stepney. The museum director requested my services, and besides, my brother's taking part in the shunting challenge. Your brother? Asked Thomas. Box Hill, replied Stepney.
Box Hill.
He's part of the museum
railway
collection.
Series book I was talking about.
I remember Box Hill, cried Thomas. I used to work with him when I lived in Brighton. Then it'll be a delightful reunion then, chuckled Stepney. Who else is here?
Really?
Thomas quickly explained. Stepney smiled. Well, I wish all 4 of you the best of luck. You're going up against the finest engines, including Box Hill, of course. Thank you, Stepney, said Thomas. Stepney beamed and went back to work. Thomas was excited. Seeing Stepney again made him more eager to take part in the Railway Games.
Who else is going to be here?
Before long, everything was ready for the shunting challenge, which was the first event.
Basically, this is the Great Race, but in Classic Series style. That's what I've just realised. This is like the 2016 CGI special, The Great Race, but in the style of the Classic Series.
James unfortunately drew the short straw with this one, but Box Hill was a very kind and polite engine. Aye, may the best engine win, said Box Hill. Oh, I plan to, muttered James. The Railway Games official waved his flag and blew his whistle. Stepney joined Gordon, Thomas, Percy and the Fat Controller at the sidelines, and they cheered on the 2 engines. The trucks here were much better behaved than the ones on Sodor, and because this was a competition, they didn't dare play any tricks. Box Hill and James bustled backwards and forwards, and the game was simple. They had to arrange the trucks into a long line, and whoever coupled their brake van to the train first was declared the winner. James had never felt so exhausted as he bustled around the yards. Box Hill was like a speeding bullet. James could swear that he had passed him 3 times before he had found his next truck. Soon the end of the race came into sight.
Box Hill's going to win.
Box Hill! Come on, James! Stepney called, and the cheers continued. James grabbed his brake van, but there was trouble. The brakes on the van were quite faulty, and James struggled and strained to reach the finish line. By the time he reached his train, Box Hill had already found his brake van and had won.
Told you Box Hill was going to win.
Thomas and Percy groaned. Stepney felt sorry for them, but was happy that Box Hill won the event. James was glad it was over. His cheeks were as red as his paintwork.
Knew that was going to be said.
Soon it was Percy's turn. His event was a tug-of-war, but he didn't like the engine he was going up against. The museum called him Single Stirling No. 1. He also went by the name of Seamus. He was a large single-wheel tender engine on the Great Northern Railway.
One of Emily's siblings.
When he saw Percy, he scowled. "You think you got a chance to defeat me, little one?" He smirked. "I'll have you clean off the rails before the competition's over." "We'll see about that," said Percy confidently. Percy and Seamus stood back to back. The coupling for the tug-of-war was placed in between them. The Railway Games official once again waved his flag and blew his whistle.
Here we go. Who's going to win?
The noise was extraordinary. Percy was pulling one way and Seamus the other.
That would actually be cringe. I would actually be cringing because my eardrum will probably burst.
"I'll show you," gasped Percy. "You wait and see." Thomas was frantically cheering Percy on, hoping he would win. But it was not to be. With one final effort, Seamus pulled Percy and the wind towards him. But Gordon and James looked doubtful. Thomas did too. There were only 2 events to go, and already 2 of them had been lost to the engines of York.
Ooh, to be continued. Can't wait for part 2 tomorrow. Is that it? Oh, not a good start. Not a good start for Team Sodor right there, as they seem to have lost the first 2 events to Team York right there. So, not really good. I really hope Team Sodor can turn things round in part 2. But judging from what I've seen right there, wouldn't hold my breath. But so yeah, this is definitely in the style of season 3 right here. Can't wait to see what part 2's like. Really love how some of the engines from the Railway Series book, Thomas and the Great Railway Show, are in this, such as, Box Hill, and obviously the Stirling engine right there. So, yeah, this was definitely worth the wait it was. I know I'm a week late on it, but it was definitely worth the wait of finding the time for it. It was definitely getting in the spirit, in the mood for the Olympics this year, aren't we, Kiefer? So, yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting to see what happens in part 2. But I'm confident that Team Sodor can turn it round. But I guess we only have to wait for part 2 tomorrow right there. But this was definitely a great way to start off season 5. It was right there with part 1. And hopefully part 2 will further cement the great start we have to season 5 of Kiefer's Thomas and Friends audio stories. So, yeah, that was the audio story right there for you folks. You do want to check out my previous Thomas reactions, whenever it's an audio story or a trained adaptation. I will play this up in the top right corner of your screen right now. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button for me. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this audio story I reacted to. Also let me know in the comments down below what other videos you want me to react to next. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok. Links to both of them will be in the description down below. Share this video, subscribe if you're new here, ring that bell to get notified when I upload new videos when I post on the community tab, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!